It was around 3 in the morning when I first realized I had a serious problem. Since my wife Sandra was away, I had spent the previous evening with friends and had drunk quite a lot. Now my bladder was insistently demanding that I get out of bed and relieve it. When I got out of bed, I couldn't stand up straight, and opening the bathroom door, I stubbed my toe on the door frame. I cursed a couple of times, not worrying about waking Sandra. She was away at some damn seminar her company was organizing. I limped into the bathroom. Damn, what a great night I had with the guys. I didn't even have time to get undressed, and then it hit me, a burning pain when I urinated. My old brain kicked in, and I recognized the feeling. Suddenly, I stopped being angry. Oh, I was still peeing and feeling every drop. But now I was sober as a judge. I had felt this burning before. It was a long time ago, but some things you never forget. Many years ago, about a month after I went to the Reading Pop Festival in the 60s. You all know how it was back then. There was no AIDS, and birth control pills were already on the market. Well, I took a dose from one of the girls I slept with there. I stood there wondering what it was this time. Chlamydia or gonorrhea. Damn, how could I have contracted a sexually transmitted disease? I've been happily married for almost 10 years, and although I must admit that I've had offers and even succumbed to temptation on occasion, I haven't been with another woman since I met Sandra. I stopped writing and started vomiting. Damn! Sandra, what the hell have you done? I met Sandra at work, or rather, at her work. I was checking the fire alarm in her office. That's my job. I install and maintain fire and security alarm systems. At the time, I was working for a large company that had a lot of contracts in the city. By the city, I mean the City of London, where all those jerks make a ton of money talking nonsense and bragging to each other about how smart they are. Anyway, I was staring at Sandra, and she was staring at me. I asked her out on a date, and she said yes. From then on, everything went smoothly. The next thing I remember is her lying in my bed, and 6 months later we were married. Sandra sold her apartment, I sold mine, and we bought a nice little house in Harrow in northwest London. Not on the hill where Harrow School is, but close enough to sound impressive. Listen, some of London's best bank robbers live there, when they're not in prison. Sandra and I were earning good money and decided that we would pay off the house in a few years, so we put off talking about children for the time being. For a couple of years, we lived the so-called yuppie lifestyle and had a lot of fun. Then some bastard, probably working in the city, decided to sell the company I worked for. The new owners didn't want to hire employees, they just wanted my employer's contracts, so I was out of a job. Sandra suggested that we start our own business. We did the math, and Sandra made a few phone calls. God, that girl can talk nonstop. My garage suddenly turned into a warehouse, and I became self-employed. Sandra took time off work from time to make phone calls. Before I knew it, some of my former co-workers were working for me. Then we had to rent a store in the next neighborhood and move the business there because the garage was getting too small. There was talk of Sandra working with me full-time, but that never happened. By that time, I was already a clerk, and the guys were running errands. To be honest, Sandra didn't need to work anymore. She could have stayed home and had the children we always talked about. But that didn't happen either. Sandra was pursuing a career at her firm, and talk of children gradually died down. Wait, don't think that Sandra and I were growing apart. On the contrary, we spent all our time together. I went to all the parties her firm threw, and she usually came to our monthly meetings at my small company. You see, my employees work irregular hours. That's not very conducive to family life. It doesn't make wives happy. So once a month, everyone who wasn't on duty was invited to dinner and a small party with their spouses. Everything was going well, as I also had a policy of hiring my employees' wives to work in the office. You know, to keep everything in the family. Everything worked perfectly. We had a reputation as a company you could rely on. Everyone covered for each other, if you know what I mean. Now Sandra's gone to that damn seminar, and I'm pretty sure I've caught gonorrhea. Maybe I'm cynical, but I knew the only place I could have caught it was from my loving wife. The first thing I had to do was make sure I was right. That was pretty easy. I called the girls in the morning and told them I'd be late for work, then headed to the clinic I'd been going to for years. A very nice nurse from the West Indies filled out some forms, took a swab, and said the results would be ready on Tuesday. Then she asked me to make a list of all my sexual partners over the past few months. I told her there had only been one, and that was my wife. She looked a little embarrassed when she said, "I'm sorry you told me that, but this isn't the first time." I thanked her and left. At the office, I tried to act normal, but I couldn't really pull it off. My coworkers unanimously decided that either I go home or they're going to revolt. So I went home and got drunk. It was the best I could come up with at the time. Around 4 o'clock, Sandra called and asked what happened. It turned out she had been trying to call me at work, but they told her I had gone home. I don't know how I managed to speak to her politely. I just said I wasn't feeling well. She suggested I come home from the seminar early. That was the last thing I wanted to do, so I said everything was fine. On Tuesday, I called the clinic early, but the results weren't ready yet. The nurse called me back around noon and said it was chlamydia and I needed to take a course of antibiotics. The AIDS test would take some time. I went back to the clinic to pick up the pills. This time, I was taken to see the doctor, and after a long conversation, he gave me a letter for Sandra asking her to get tested. After I left the clinic, I was in complete turmoil. There's only one way to get chlamydia. Don't believe all those silly school stories. The only way to get it is through sex with an infected person. That meant Sandra had been cheating on me. She had been cheating on me. But why would she do that? And when? Did she really love me? She always said she did. We had a good sex life. Well, if we didn't, I wouldn't have gotten infected. Okay, forget about that. When did she cheat on me? God, she had every opportunity. Was she working all those days she came home late? I could only assume she wasn't. Let's look at it another way. The incubation period for chlamydia is 3 to 4 weeks. I was lucky because sometimes there are no symptoms at all. What had happened in the last couple of months? Yes, damn it, that damn conference in Manchester that Sandra went to. She was very nervous before the trip, and she was upset about the changes that were going to happen at her company after she got back. She was acting strangely toward me for a couple of weeks after she got back, and now I believed that something had been bothering her since then. Was she upset about work? Or was there something else on her mind? That was about 6 weeks ago. I can only conclude that Sandra contracted chlamydia at that conference. Sandra must have slept with someone there. Correction, someone slept with her. Someone who was infected with chlamydia. Next problem. Did my loving wife have a habit of sleeping with everyone behind my back? I remembered. Were there moments in the past when she acted strangely towards me? Yes, there had been many such moments, but she had recently been promoted to a very high position, and I always explained her strange mood by that. And to be honest, there were times when I behaved the same way with her when things were going badly for me at work. I believed that she was much more patient with me than I was with her when that happened. Okay, forget about it. What should I do now? I have to talk to her. Damn, can I do that? I have a really short temper. Can I control myself? After all, I could only control myself on the phone. I really didn't believe I would dare to trust myself in a confrontation with Sandra. I could really lose it. Damn. My thoughts were in complete chaos. Sandra would be back on Wednesday. What the hell was I going to do? After thinking it through carefully, I decided that I needed to get away from her, as far away as possible. I really didn't want to know who she had slept with or why she had slept with him. I just wanted to get away, any way I could. It was late in the evening when I arrived at my lawyer, Derek's office. I had known this guy for many years. He was one of my first clients. I told him everything in detail and said I was leaving. He looked surprised when I told him I was leaving the country. The further away I was from Sandra, the safer she would be. I believed he understood me. I gave him power of attorney. The company would run itself, and Sandra knew enough to keep an eye on things. I appointed one of my employees to be in charge and left Sandra the right to sell the company or run it herself if she wanted to. What Sandra wanted to do about the divorce was her business, but I was willing to agree to irreconcilable differences. I saw no point in airing our dirty laundry in public. Derek tried to convince me that I was rushing into things, that I should wait and talk to Sandra, but the look I gave him made him drop the idea. I went home, packed my things, and left a letter from the clinic on the table in the hall where Sandra would find it when she came home on Wednesday evening. Then I drove to the office, handed over my duties to my deputy Roger, and told him I was leaving. He was the boss, and Sandra would be the owner of the company by Thursday lunchtime. I also warned everyone not to contact Sandra under any circumstances until she contacted them herself. I spent the night at a local hotel and withdrew a large sum of money from the bank in the morning. They were surprised to see £15,000 in cash, but they gave me the money without asking any questions. I drove to Heathrow Airport, parked in the short-term lot, called the office, and asked them to send 2 employees to pick up the company car. The next step was to confuse anyone who was trying to find me. I took a bus back to London, where I transferred to a train to Dover. On the ferry, I met a truck driver who kindly gave me a ride to Bruges in Belgium, and from there I took a bus to my final destination, a small farm near Roeselare, where my old friend and his Belgian wife lived. Bruce and Donna, no, that's not her real name, but that's what everyone had called her since we were in college, listened to my story. Bruce and I had always been very similar in character. I believed that was why we got along so well. When we were together, if one of us got upset, the other would calm him down. So Bruce at least understood why I had left. They put me up in their spare room, and I helped Bruce on the farm for a few weeks while I decided what to do next. Derek wrote to me and said that Sandra had come to see him. She wanted him to tell her where I was, but he refused, as I had asked him to. She told him that she didn't want a divorce, but if I did, she would agree to it. He said he hadn't pressured her about how she had contracted the disease. But, to be honest, he was probably lying because he also said that Sandra had said, "No one will believe what happened if she tells them." By the time of the divorce, I had left Bruce and Donna and was living in southern Italy. Another old college friend of mine, Todd Marsh, and his wife were restoring a huge old farmhouse with a villa and turning it into a resort complex, and I decided to help them out. A couple of months later, I met Lou. She worked at a local bar owned by her family where we sometimes stopped in for a bite to eat. Lou was a very beautiful girl, and her mother soon decided that I was just what Lou needed in her life. Italian fathers believe they are the boss, but in reality, Italian mothers are the driving force. In any case, Lou's mother believed that a nice Englishman would be a good match for Lou. Apparently, we're not that picky. So she took on the role of matchmaker. Let's get this straight right away. According to the locals, Lou was a spoiled girl. She got pregnant by an American sailor when she was very young. This is not what good Italian girls are supposed to do. Of course, by the time she found out she was pregnant, the sailor had already returned to the other side of the world, and Lou found herself in a desperate situation. Italians do not forgive young girls who get pregnant out of wedlock. Macho Italians like their wives to be virgins. Louie wasn't a slut. She was a young girl who believed she had fallen in love with a jerk and got herself into trouble. In the end, the baby was stillborn, but that didn't help Louie. So she ended up an almost 30-year-old spinster that the local guys didn't look at. In the end, I was depressed, Lou was depressed, but together we managed to get back on our feet. The local priest was a real pain in the ass. He seemed to take pleasure in ignoring the fact that I was divorced, but insisted that I convert to Catholicism, which I did, gritting my teeth. Perhaps he decided he wasn't obligated to recognize my Protestant marriage. The wedding was turbulent and complicated. The next thing I remember, I was practically running the damn bar. Lou's parents were getting on in years. Her younger brothers helped out a lot when they weren't in college. As soon as I took over, things took off. As the locals quickly learned English, I'm not very good at languages. Italians aren't stupid. English lessons cost money, and in our bar, they were free. Over the next few years, we did well. Then the tourists started coming, and the whole village prospered. I heard almost nothing from Sandra. Every year I received payments from the company's profits, so I knew that business was going well and that Sandra obviously hadn't sold it. Derek came on vacation once a year, but he quickly realized that Sandra was a taboo subject. He told me that the company was expanding and business was good. About 3 years later, Derek sent me a check for half the value of the house. Sandra had apparently sold it, and I assumed she had probably remarried. Sandra was a beautiful woman and still quite young, so I had no doubt she would find another husband. But I still wondered if she had been cheating on me with the same man. The checks with the profit continued to arrive from the company every year. I was 40 years old and had been married to Lou for 8 years when the second bomb hit my life. Lou was pregnant, and one morning she woke up with stomach pains. I was very worried, but she told me not to worry. During siesta time, she lay down on the bed for a minute. There was a lot of work at the bar that day. Looking back, I realize I should have gone to check on her when she didn't come down for the evening shift. When I closed the bar that night, it was too late. Lou had a miscarriage. She went into shock and died the next day after lunch. When I married Lou, I didn't believe I loved her. But she was a beautiful young woman, and I grew very fond of her. Her death nearly destroyed me. God, my life was shit. In 10 years, I had lost 2 people I loved. For a while, I was in despair. Lou's family took over the bar, and I enjoyed the sympathy of the village. That damn priest drove me crazy. He was with me almost every minute. I know he wanted the best for me, but I only know basic Italian and he spoke Latin all the time. I received condolence cards from all over the world. One of them upset me a lot because it was signed simply S and A. I was damn sure it was from Sandra and her new husband. That card really annoyed me. After the funeral, I realized that I couldn't stay in Italy any longer. So I returned to Bruce and Donna in Belgium. Bruce and I went back to our old life for a while until Donna put us in our place. Donna is a wonderful girl, and Bruce is lucky to have her. She put up with me for so long, and then she put me in my place. She told me to get my act together, figure myself out, and move on with my life. Bruce found me a job. I mentioned that I don't speak languages very well, so that was a bit of a problem. But most of my colleagues spoke a little English, and after a couple of months, they were all speaking English pretty well. I believe that's why they put up with me. I wasn't the most cheerful employee. I spent my free time helping Bruce on his small farm and playing with his children. I believed that it was very painful. I would never be able to play with my children. 6 months in Belgium was enough. I needed to move on again. When I drove my little Fiat off the ferry at Dover, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I think autopilot took me back to London, to that small, now not so small, hotel in Harrow, where I had stayed the night I left the house I shared with Sandra. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I drove to North Harrow, where the shop that had once been my company's office was located. Damn, now they occupied 3 premises in a row. I don't know what came over me, but I parked at the entrance and went in. For a moment, I didn't recognize a single face, but as soon as the secretary asked how she could help me, someone shouted, "Damn, it's the damn boss!" There was a commotion, and faces I recognized poured out of the offices to the left, right, and center. I was dragged into Roger's now rather luxurious office and pushed into a chair behind his desk. Then, without giving me a chance to ask what I was doing there, he started telling me what he had been doing at the company since I left. He didn't ask where I had been or why I had suddenly shown up, but I interrupted him when he called over a young woman and introduced her to me as his boss. "Wait a minute, Roger. I'm not running this place anymore. You are." "Oh no, boss. You're not going to fool me again. You asked me to look after the company for a few weeks, and it turned into almost 10 damn years. Now you can take your worries back and don't believe I'll leave again. I don't mind doing the day-to-day stuff, but it's your firm, not mine. No, it's Sandra's company. I transferred everything to her when I left. I think you'd better talk to Sandra about that, boss. At that moment, the door burst open and Derek stormed into the room. My God, Mike, when did you get back? He greeted me. Yesterday. What, did they kick me out of the country or something? I was angry with Derek. His question was like a challenge to me. I didn't mean to upset you, Mike. I just thought you'd let me know when you were coming, that's all. I wanted to be prepared. Well, now you know I'm here, so don't worry. Derek left the door open, and my attention was drawn to a girl of about 10 who was standing in the doorway looking at me. The manager appeared and tried to pull the child away. No, leave me alone, the girl said angrily. Breaking free from the woman's grasp, she boldly entered the room. She slowly approached me, and I suddenly felt very uncomfortable. I want to see my father, she said. Her eyes and mine filled with tears. I knew that this girl was my daughter. She looked like my younger sister when she was little. For the next few minutes, no one said a word. I dropped to my knees and the child threw herself into my arms and hugged me. I looked questioningly at Derek, my eyes filling with tears. I'm sorry, Mike, but every time I tried to tell you, you interrupted me, Derek blurted out. Then, with an annoyed expression, he added, What the hell was I supposed to do? Could you leave us alone, gentlemen? Came a very familiar female voice. I hadn't noticed Sandra enter the room while I was focused on my daughter. Derek and Roger couldn't get out of the room fast enough and closed the door behind them. Hello, Mike. I see you've met Alana. I'd like to introduce you properly. Hello, Sandra. She's a bit of a shocker. Why didn't anyone tell me about her? Mike, with your temper, no one could tell you anything. Derek tried to tell you many times. Once I was in his office when he tried to tell you on the phone that I was pregnant. As soon as he mentioned me, you hung up. I'm sorry, but I was very angry with you at the time. Are you still angry with me? I don't know. Probably yes, after I found out what you did. I believe I can understand your anger, but you really don't understand. Alana, please step outside with Uncle Derek for a moment. Your father and I need to talk. Don't worry. I'm sure he won't go anywhere. Alana broke free from my grip. You're not going to leave without saying goodbye to me, are you, Dad? I haven't even said hello to you. I need to get to know you better. I'm not going anywhere until I know everything about you. My thoughts were in complete chaos. What do you say to a 10-year-old daughter you didn't even know existed? When Alana left, I started to get angry at Sandra for not telling me about her. Damn, I was angry at Derek, too. God, I believed I was angry at the whole world as I watched Alana walk away. I turned to Sandra, and I'm sure she saw the anger in my eyes. Sit down, Mike, and just listen, Sandra demanded. I don't know why I just did as she asked. I was angry, but in the years since I had last seen Sandra, I had learned to control my anger a little. You weren't told about Alana at first because you were married to Lou when I found out she was your daughter. I didn't want to ruin your marriage to her. I knew I had ruined our relationship, and I didn't want to ruin yours with Lou. I started to say something. Please, just shut up and listen, Mike. I knew I was pregnant when you left, but I didn't know if it was your child or not. That's why I was so upset during those weeks when you were away. I can imagine how you felt when you found out you had chlamydia. God, it was a shock to me. But please believe me, I never cheated on you. I was raped. I must have opened my mouth in surprise. You know how it is. Too much information in too little time. My mind was trying to process what Sandra was saying. She was claiming she had been raped. But if that was the case, why hadn't she told me or gone to the police? Oh! What would you have done if I had told you? Sandra beat me to the punch. I'll tell you. You would have rushed over there like some kind of avenging hero and probably killed the guy. I knew your character. You would have beaten him to death without thinking about the consequences. I had to admit that Sandra was right. I would have killed anyone who did that to my woman. I would have killed anyone who hurt my family. Wasn't that why I left when I believed Sandra had betrayed me? But why didn't you go to the police? It's complicated, Mike. Let me start from the beginning and tell you what happened. With a little luck, you might understand. Let's have some tea, and I'll tell you the whole story. Sandra stood up, poked her head out the door, and asked someone to make us some tea. I heard her assure everyone that everything was fine. Then she came back and sat down. "Damn it, Mike, I've ruined everything," she said, sitting down again. "Remember that big conference I went to in Manchester? Well, it was about reorganizing the entire company. Control of my department was transferred to another director, and he announced that some of my employees and responsibilities would be taken away from me. I was effectively demoted. I was furious. I'd been running that department for a couple of years, and we'd achieved great success, but that bastard Thompson was going to destroy my little kingdom. Well, I couldn't argue at the negotiating table, so all I could do was sit there and listen. I hoped I'd be able to talk Thompson out of it later that day, but the conference ended quite late, and when we left, Thompson immediately went to dinner with the old man, Sir Robert Mortlake, the chairman of the board of directors. I had dinner alone, then sat in the bar, quietly seething with anger. To be honest, I probably had one too many, but I was upset. Anyway, around 10 o'clock I went to my room. I'm afraid I hit the bottle there too, I don't know. I probably couldn't think straight by then, and after a couple of drinks I decided to call Thompson's room and tell him everything that was on my mind. At first, no one answered. He probably hadn't come back yet. I don't know how many times I called, but eventually he answered. I started lashing out at him, but he was very conciliatory. He apologized for upsetting me with his plan and suggested I come up to his room to discuss it. I could hear other people talking in the background, so I believed I would be alone with him. I decided that everything would be fine. When I went up, Sir Robert and several of his friends were there. In fact, Sir Robert was just about to leave when I arrived and was very surprised to see me, so I realized that Thompson hadn't told him I was coming up to his room. There was a knock at the door and Roger came in with a tray of tea. When he left, Sandra began pouring tea for both of us. Then she continued. A few minutes later, everyone except Thompson and his secretary Gail left the room. I started telling Thompson that he was going to destroy the really good team I had built, and he seemed to agree with me. Then he suddenly told me that I could stay in my department if I slept with him. I told him he must be joking, but he came over, tried to hug me and kiss me. He said that if I behaved myself, I would become a director very soon. I pushed him away, slapped him in the face, and told him I wouldn't sell my body for a job or power. I looked at his secretary for support, but she just turned away and went into one of the bedrooms. You have to remember that I was pretty drunk. Thompson just lunged at me and knocked me down. He dragged me into the bedroom behind Gail. Then he held me while Gail took my clothes off. When I was naked, Gail took the lead and Thompson raped me. I just can't tell you what they did to me, but Thompson raped me not once, but several times, and the whole time Gail held me down. Didn't you scream? Yes, when I could, damn it, I screamed. But that penthouse was on the top floor. I don't believe anyone could have heard me. Thompson didn't care how much noise I made. He just laughed, and that bitch Gail egged him on. I don't remember everything that happened. I must have passed out. When I came to, I was in my room. I didn't know what to do. The first thing that came to mind was to go to Sir Robert Mortlake. He lived in another building, so I got dressed and rushed over to his place. When I entered his room, I was in for the biggest shock of my life. Sir Robert told me that Thompson had already been there. Thompson, supported by his secretary, told him that I had made advances toward him, seduced him, and then tried to force him to change his decision about the reshuffle in my department. Thompson told the old man that I had threatened to report him to the police for rape if he did not leave my department as it was. What could I do? Thompson had outsmarted me, and he had a witness. If I reported the rape, Thompson would accuse me of blackmail, Then I would have a real problem, and a more serious one, in my opinion. If I told you what happened, you would believe me. And if you believed me, how the hell could I stop you from killing Thompson? I knew your character. I didn't want you to spend years behind bars. Sir Robert Mortlake told me he would forget about my accusations if I didn't mention it again, and would see to it that I kept my job. I tried to put it out of my mind and pretend nothing had happened, but then my period didn't come, and I suspected I was pregnant. The problem was the baby yours or Thompson's? I was still trying to figure that out when I came home from the seminar and found that you had left, and there was a letter from a venereal disease clinic on the table in the hall. To be honest, Mike, I didn't know what to do. In a way, your leaving saved me from the agonizing attempt to explain everything to you. Mike, I loved you and believed I understood why you left. I knew you couldn't trust your character. When Derek tried to get me to tell him what happened, I didn't tell him at first. But when it became more and more obvious that I was pregnant, I told Derek everything. By that time, he had already started the divorce proceedings you wanted, and I foolishly let him go through with it. I believed that if she was yours, we could tell you about Alan after she was born. We would have done a paternity test and then told you. Then you could have decided what to do, but I wanted you to come back. Derek went to Italy to tell you about Alana, but you... So that's why Derek showed up right after the wedding. Yes, you beat us to it, didn't you? You married Lou. I was terribly upset when you did that. Derek came back and told me after talking to Marsh. Did you know they were very concerned about your mental state at the time? They believed you had just come to your senses. Derek decided it was best not to tell you. Since you married Lou, he thought it best not to rock the boat until things settled down. Oh, God, I'm sorry, Sandra, but I was in a terrible state. Lou was my friend and very supportive. I know, I'm not stupid. You believed I was cheating on you. I know how much you put into our marriage, and I know you had no choice but to believe I was cheating on you. If I had told you I was raped, I know you would have supported me. You had every right to believe what you believed. Damn it, I should have talked to you. I should have been there for you when you needed me. Damn it, where can I find that bastard Thompson? You ruined everything. That's why I didn't tell you from the beginning. Anyway, you won't find him because he left for the U.S. Please forget about Thompson. What about us? What are you going to do now? God, I really don't know. What about your husband? How will he feel about me being around? What husband are you talking about? You're the only husband I've ever had. But you sold the house. I thought you had remarried when you did that. No, it was our house. Yours and mine. I sold it because I couldn't live there without you. Every room reminded me of you. I left a few weeks after you did. I couldn't live there without you. But you kept it for 4 years. I hoped you would come back. I asked Tony Marsh to keep an eye on your marriage to Lou. When it became clear that you were happy, I sold the house. It was too painful to keep it, knowing that I had lost you. Sandra, I really don't know what to do. I can't just come back into your life after all these years. I'll be upset, but I can understand that you don't want to come back into my life, but please come back into Alana's life. She needs a father. Damn it, Sandra. I didn't say I didn't want to be part of your life. Listen, I left you when you needed me. I divorced you and married Lou. While you were raising our daughter alone, I was having fun in Italy. So you don't love me anymore. Damn it, Sandra, of course I love you. I've always loved you. I hate to say this, but when I married Lou, I was trying to forget you. Lou became my life, and I fell in love with her. But you were always in my heart. I never forgot you, and never stopped loving you. I just don't understand how you can take me back. Okay, if you're ready, let's try again. Listen, Mike, we can only try. I've always loved you. Alana has been without a real family for too long. Let's try to give her a normal family. Will you try? Sandra got up from her chair and walked around the table. Without ceremony, she plopped down on my lap, leaned over, and kissed me. God, it was so good that I can't say how long the kiss lasted. But it was as if it wiped away 10 years of torment. The sudden silence in the office must have been noticed outside, because after a while the door opened. "Everything's fine. They didn't kill each other. They just said hello properly." Alana's voice filled the room. "I hope you'll be nicer to me now, Mom, because Dad's back with you, and I don't expect it to last." Sandra and I broke off our kiss. We both held out our free arms, and Alana came over to us. Sandra and I got married about 6 months later. Now the three of us, soon to be 4, live in Sandra's apartment. We just found out that our old house is back on the market, so we're going to make an offer. Things between Sandra and me will probably never be the same as when we were married. But we're not the same people anymore. We've both grown older and, I hope, wiser. I know we appreciate each other much more. As for Sir Robert Mortlake, things turned out badly for that slimy old bastard. I'm damn sure he knew exactly what happened in that hotel room. It seems he also picked up a venereal disease somewhere. Of course, he infected his wife, and she cleaned him out while I was in Italy. That'll teach him not to hire Thompson's secretary when Thompson leaves the company. No, Sandra didn't give him the letter from the clinic. It was the best she could come up with at the time. After a long search, I managed to track down Gail. You didn't think I was going to leave things as they were, did you? Gail is infertile. I think I told you that sometimes chlamydia has no symptoms. Long-term complications can be very unpleasant. Gail married some guy, but he divorced her because he said he wanted children. Personally, I think he didn't like what some jerk told him about the woman he married. As for Thompson, he's in a wheelchair now. Some idiot ran him over with his car 2 or 3 times. I was in shock and don't remember exactly. I don't think he'll be raping women anymore.